Hello everybody, this is Elagatua, and I'm back with another video. This is going to be a two-part video, and this is part one. In this series, we are going to be talking about the map Logarithmic, and in this first part, I will be going over the map itself, some openers, and some commentary about how matches play out on this map, and we'll be going through a number of different replays at a very quick speed to just get a high-level idea of how games tend to turn out on this map and what to focus on. And then in part two, in a separate video, I'll be going over one of my games in the excruciating detail that you're accustomed to for videos on this channel. So now that you know what we're doing, let's get into this map. So I've just booted up a replay between Tordread and Crawfy just so that we can go over everything on the map. So this map may look a little bit intimidating to newer players because there's a lot of pipe seams, and that's probably the first thing you notice on this map. And some of the terrain is a little bit funky and how they interact with the pipe seam. So let's break everything down. So first of all, let's look at bases. So we got our base here, and then a neutral base here that's going to belong to player one in the top left corner. And annoyingly, that base is 2 infantry moves away. So it's going to take 2 moves to start capping that. And then the airport is back here. So it's actually pretty far back. If you want to get air units to the front lines, you have to either like go this way, or God forbid you have to go this way. So it's kind of awkward. And then the comm towers. So here and whoops, not that one. Sorry. Here and here are going to be player one's comm towers, and then here and here for player two. So pretty straightforward, and then there's a lot of cities scattered across the board. We'll get into the cities a little bit later. And then for player two, I guess same deal with the base here and airport here, comm towers here and here. And I think before we go any further, let's talk about the pipe seams. So there's 3 pipe seams, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so if you want the TLDR version of this, or the too long didn't listen, and you just want to know which pipe seam to break, break this one. That's the pipe seam you want to break. You can choose to break the other ones later if you want, but that the one that I circled there is the critical one. Now that you know the answer, let's have a nice discussion about why. So as you may have noticed, we have these forest tiles that are blocking the main way out onto the map from both of these bases here and here. So all these guys have to come through here. So they have to go through 2 forest tiles, and these bases are in equal distance away from the center. So for example, if you built a tank here and then a tank here, and then you wanted to move both tanks towards the center of the map, you would have a problem because they'd be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this one from this base here would go 1, 2, 3, 4, but then there's already a tank here. So the tanks are going to interfere with each other's path to the center of the map. And so that's really annoying. Additionally, whoops, I just booted out of the game. Additionally, if you're building like an artillery and you want to get to the center of the map, well, then you have, or a medium tank, then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can't actually get here because that's too many moves. So getting units into the middle of the map, if you're trying to spam vehicles or if you have artillery, is very awkward without breaking any of the pipe seams. So naturally, when you've broken the pipe seams, then things become a lot more straightforward, because then you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so the blockage is much less severe. They're going to get in each other's way, but the one behind on this tile is only going to be one move behind where it would normally be, instead of here where it's going to end up 2 moves behind where it would normally be. So breaking down that pipe seam is very important. Additionally, let's look at kind of zones of the map based on how many tank moves it takes to get there. So first of all, let's do it without any pipe seams. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so roughly around here is like your 3 move line for this base, and for this base 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, okay, so if you go this way, you can get a little further. So you're looking like the 3 move line is here. Oops, I erased that, I didn't mean to. And then the 2 move line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is like around here. My diagonals are not very straight. But the reason that I'm illustrating this is pretty much this entire area here is 3 moves away, through three tank moves away from both of your main bases that are going to be sending units in this direction. Now let's look at it from the other side, and let's see what the opponent's time to this area is. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this whole area here in the middle is 3 tank moves from both bases. So if everybody is sending all their vehicles this way and all the vehicles this way, they are going to be fighting in kind of this slice of the map. And if you have both players sending all of their money into units to the same place, what generally happens is a big stalemate. That just makes sense, right? They're both sending everything they've got to the same place, and there's no movement difference between the 2 sides. So the trades tend to be relatively even, because one side is not getting there faster than the other, assuming that tactically they're kind of not making any mistakes or kind of fighting at the same skill level, which is not to be taken for granted. But we're just talking about the dynamics of the map. So, so as you can expect, this kind of center band here, now that I drew that a little wider than I wanted to, but this kind of center band is about equidistance from both players. For the majority of the bases. Now, this base actually can get over here and down here a little bit faster. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this base can actually get to the comm tower and also to this city. So these 2 properties in 2 moves. But that's only from one base. So when we talk about why does this comm tower belong to yellow and this comm tower belong to green, it's because this comm tower is closer to player 2, the yellow player, from this base, and so there is a slight reinforce advantage. However, the thing that I really like this map, I think it's pretty cool. The interesting thing about the dynamics of this map is when the pipe seam breaks, the reinforced dynamics towards the center shift pretty dramatically. So now let's do kind of a similar exercise for player 1, assuming that this pipe seam is busted down, okay? So this pipe seam's been broken. So now it reinforces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. So now this comm tower is 2.5 moves. And this is the other player's comm tower, by the way. So player 2's comm tower is 2.5 tank moves from player 1's bases. And not only that, but it's 2.5 moves from both bases. So there's 2 bases with 2.5 kind of tank reinforces moves to get to here. So that's very, very fast. And let's say that both players have busted down this pipe seam, and we're saying player 1 is going to be trying to attack this this area over here. Well, now, sure, yellow player 2 can reinforce in 2 moves from this base here, but for these 2 bases, they still have to go up through the 2 forests to make it to yellow's own comm tower. So as we focus on dynamics of the map, if this pipe seam is broken, player 1 has 2 relatively fast reinforcing bases to this comm tower, and player 2 has, well, 1 base that can reinforce quickly and 2 bases that are reinforcing much more slowly. So at the beginning, before the pipe seam is broken, this area ends up belonging to player 2 because player 2 can get units quickly from this base, and especially in the phase of the game where both players only have enough income to produce 1 vehicle per turn, that is going to make this location much more accessible to player 2 because you'll build your vehicles from this base and you'll get over here more quickly than player 1 can reinforce to this area. But that's only temporarily when there's 1 vehicle being built per turn. As soon as the income gets higher and the pipe seams get broken, now player 1 is going to be sending multiple vehicles per turn this way, and you'll get 1 vehicle fast from here, but you're going to get 1 vehicle more slowly for here. And so this becomes kind of it's not necessarily a no man's land, but it's only under player 2's sphere of influence for a limited time. And so that's what's so interesting about this map. The geography of the map at the beginning has a timer, and as soon as that timer goes off, then areas, the different areas basically become contestable on the map. And so because of this, figuring out good openers to take advantage of the timings are very, very important. And we're going to get to that in a little bit, but figuring out when to break the pipe seam is very important, and figuring out a capture order as well as just kind of a idea of how you want to build vehicles in the early game is very important, because you have access as the stronger player to certain areas of the game, but after things happen on the map and after the income gets sufficiently high, that's going to change. And if you end up behind after that early phase of the game, then it can be pretty impactful, and you may be fighting at a disadvantage for a long time on this map. So as is tradition, let's talk about contestable properties. So these are the key properties for sure. It's really just these 2. And they're on a diagonal, so here is kind of one, I think it's 1 tile closer to this side, and here is one tile closer to this side, but importantly, they're on an axis, and you may be tempted to think that this corner city is a contestable property. It's actually kind of not, and the reason for that is in the early game. So player 2 can get vehicles up to here pretty quickly, right? Because this is the fast reinforced base. So again, early on when there's kind of one vehicle per turn being built, then player 2 actually has a pretty good way to get vehicles up here to deny this. But as soon as the pipe seam gets broken, now the reinforced here for multiple vehicles becomes very fast for player 1. And so it then becomes very difficult for player 2 to exert pressure all the way up here, because they have to kind of get around the reinforced path of vehicles from 2 bases. And so basically what ends up happening is, by turn 11 or 12 or whenever this pipe seam goes down, this city turns into a safe city for player 1. So I think if you're interested in trying to deny this in the early game as player 2, or deny this as player 1, that's an option, but there is a deadline for how long this city is going to be contestable. So if it's day 11 or 12 or 13, and you're continuously trying to deny this city, there's a very good chance, especially if you're trying to deny it with vehicles, there's a very good chance that you are exposing yourself to a lot of risk and potentially setting yourself up to get crushed because you're overextending too far. And sure, you can reinforce this area from this base, but can you really reinforce it from these 2 bases? You'll be fighting 1 base of vehicles against 2 bases of vehicles, and that's not going to go well for you. So I think that these are really the critical properties, and especially the comm tower is incredibly important. Getting 2 comm towers simplifies a lot of the brawling math in Advanced Wars by Web because of the infantry attack and the tanks attack. So you probably know this already if you have some experience, but if you're a newer player, the reason that 2 comm towers is very important is because if you have 2 comm towers and you have 2 infantry that attack an enemy infantry that is capping a city, that's a guaranteed kill. With 1 comm tower, it's not a guaranteed kill, but with 2 comm towers, the 2 infantry will always kill the 1 infantry on the city. And so having a guaranteed kill can make planning your attacks much easier because there's no luck involved. Similarly, if you have 2 tanks attacking a tank on a city with 2 comm towers, that is a guaranteed kill on the tank on the city. Otherwise, it is a roll. Obviously, certain CO math can affect this, like if they have defense or if they have if a CO power is active or something like that. But the standard is that's kind of how the math works. So if you end up with 2 comm towers and your opponent only ends up with 1, then it can be very easy to deny the enemy comm tower because you just know that you need 2 infantry. You need 2 infantry kind of along this line, and as long as you can get 2 infantry kind of this far on your side of the map, you can get close enough to here to guarantee a kill on an infantry on the comm tower. And so getting that advantage starts to reinforce itself over time. So in essence, these properties are very important to get in the early game because, like we mentioned earlier, your map control of that area is on a timer. And if you do not get these properties in the early game, what ends up happening is the pipe seam for the other player gets broken, and then it becomes very, very difficult to control these areas long enough to actually cap them. And so they end up getting denied forever. And if you are not also denying the enemy's properties in these areas, then you are going to end up at a disadvantage when the brawling happens. So I think that is enough coverage of the map itself. Now I want to go into the actual series of replays. And the first thing I want to do is talk about some different opening strategies here. So and when we talk about opening strategies, I'm talking about the first 5 to 7 turns, because there's some choices that can be made here. You have this base here, so this infantry is gonna go here. So this base's first infantry is going to go to the base, generally first. But the infantry from here can either go to this city, which is 1 move away, or that infantry can go up in this direction and try to get to the contested properties and this area a little bit faster. And so similarly, this infantry could try to go out here first, forgoing this city, which is pretty safe. So let's look at kind of how that breaks down in some of the income curves. And we're going to do this for player 1 and player 2 separately, because the income curves are a little bit different. So on this replay, I'm just going to be watching player 1 first, just to see what happens here. So this is the least greedy version. So this is sending the infantry to the closest city to get the most income as fast as possible. So let's just kind of see how this plays out. Okay, so day 4, we end up with 7,000 income, and we've got 2 bases. So what this means is by day 4, the options for player 1 would be either like a recon and infantry, a artillery and an infantry, or just infantry saving for a tank next turn. If you wanted to get an artillery first, probably the reason you would do that is to try and go for the early pipe seam break. The downside of going for that is the pipe seam HP is visible to the other player. And so if you build an artillery on this turn, and then on day 5 you move it here, and on day 6 you start attacking the pipe seam, if your opponent is paying attention, then you will be basically telling your opponent for free exactly what you have built, because if you notice 40 HP missing from the pipe seam on day 6, well, there's kind of only one thing that can make that happen. So you might get the pipe seam down really quickly, but your opponent knows that there's not going to be any vehicles out on the map that can harass you at all, and so that any sort of aggressive capture play with the infantry is going to be uncontested. So there's some risks there. And if your opponent knows what they're doing, they might be able to exploit that, and you may get the pipe seam down very quickly. But by the time that your stream of vehicles heads this direction, if your opponent is wise, they may have all these properties already, and it may be too late to do anything about it. So I think artillery first for a pipe seam break is probably not great. There was kind of discussion on the Discord about kind of a double artillery opener where you try to rush the artillery to here to deny the comm tower. I've never actually tried that opener, so I don't know if that's actually good or not. But you're welcome to try that if you think that makes sense as player one. But I probably wouldn't recommend going for an artillery first for the purpose of like trying to bust down the pipe seam immediately. And so in this game, looks like Tordread just goes for the double infantry to have 11k this turn, and now Tordread can end up with a tank. So okay, so that's one potential opener, and from there, you can kind of buy vehicles as your income dictates. Looks like Tordread will have enough for another tank next turn as well. So you can kind of see that Tordread is opting for a lot of tanks. If you've watched Tordread play before, that should not surprise you at all. But that's just one way that the income curve kind of naturally plays out. Now, let's see what crawfy does. So crawfy does actually something interesting. Actually, you know what? I'm going to come back to this replay, and we're going to look at crawfy's opener a little bit later, because I want to cover some of the other openers first, because what crawfy does is a little bit unorthodox. So I'm going to pull up my game against Tordread here, and we're going to watch me now. I'm in player 2. And so I'm going to be going for basically the same thing that Tordread did, where we're focusing on getting the maximum amount of income as early as possible. So not trying to get out on the map early, just going with the safe stuff and getting the properties that are close to us. It's actually, oops. So technically you could do day 3 recon. I just don't recommend it. So we're kind of ignoring day 3 recon. It's there if you want it, but there's so much stuff to capture on this map that I really feel like you probably shouldn't. But your mileage may vary. But anyway, so day 4 now, if we go with the most economic opener, by day 4, player 2 now has 9,000 income. Or at least 9,000 bank saved up. It's not 9,000 income, but regardless, 9,000 is a very good number, because 9,000 with 3 bases is a tank, infantry, and an infantry. So the player 2 really benefits from a more economic conservative opening, because if you don't do that, you will end up with less than 9,000 income on day 4, and you won't be able to afford the tank until day 5. Okay, so you see it's very nice. 9,000, and then next turn I've got 6,000, and 6,000 with 3 bases works very nice to get a recon. So you get tank recon very early if you go with the most conservative economic opening. Okay, so that's one option. Let's see. I'm hoping I remember. I'm gonna pause this temporarily while I find the right replay, and we're back, and I found it. Sorry about that. So now we're looking at Tordread versus Humita. I'm hoping I'm saying your name correctly, Humita. I apologize if I am butchering it, but anyway, so this is an example of a different opener. So you can see here, instead of sending this infantry down here to this city, now we are headed up here to try and get out on the map a little sooner. And so let's see what this does to our income curve. Okay, so now we're on day 4, and we only have 7,000 instead of 9,000, which is what we saw in the previous replay. So now our opening options are a little bit more limited. This could be an option if you want to go for a recon opener, but keep in mind that day 4 recon is an option, but also day 4 tank is an option. So you are foregoing having a possible tank out on the field by trying to get your infantry out on the map a little bit sooner. So I'm not really here to tell you what's like a good idea, what's a bad idea. And in this game, Humita just built infantry instead of the recon. And so now by day 5, now it's just a tank on day 5. So actually, the infantry are out further on the map a little sooner, but this is removing one vehicle from the map. So that's there's a little bit less power out on the map early on. Okay, and now let's go back to this crawfy versus Tordread game. So crawfy does something different than either the other two openings we've seen. So crawfy goes for this city before capturing the base. Which is interesting. And so ultimately what this means is that crawfy is able to kind of get infantry out on the map sooner without having to go for this property first. But crawfy is getting this city early to compensate for the lost income from this city. But then that delays the base capture. And so that's just basically you're trading away one infantry. So crawfy kind of says, all right, I want to get my infantry out on the map and I wanted a tank on day 4. But the price is you're going to end up with one less infantry than you would otherwise. So those are kind of the starting cap options. I mean, you saw what I did. I've pretty much gone with the most conservative option every single time. I think tanks are really, really good, but that's just a good breakdown of your trade-offs, at least for player 2. I don't really know if I found any of the income curves for the latter 2 scenarios for player 1. So if you're interested in the player 1 situation, you can use the move planner and submit yourself and kind of see how it works. But those are the main options available to you. Okay. So now it's time to go rapid fire through a number of replays. And the reason that we're doing this is to get an idea of how matches generally play out on this map. Can we find some similarities between any of these matches to learn from? And these are all relatively high-level matches between players that I think are worth emulating. So let's see what we can learn from looking at about 5 or 6 different matches on this map and seeing how they play out. Okay, so let's rapid fire go through these replays, and we are going to start with Tordread versus Humita, and I'm going to like zip through these. So you can see early on there's some vehicles showing up around here. Doesn't look like there's any major engagements. And so what we're going to be looking for, I really want you to pay attention to what happens with these 2 properties. As we mentioned in the map overview, those 2 are the really critical properties. So let's just see what happens with these. So it looks like Tordread has capped his comm tower. And now is on 2 towers. And now this city has been denied, and this comm tower is delayed. So now Humita is going to try and get it again. More fighting, gets delayed again. Gets killed. Fighting, fighting, fighting. So look, we're on day 15, day 14. Pipeseam is dead, uncapped. Okay, so as you can see, Tordread got these properties in the early game, and now they're safe forever. Humita did not get these properties in the early game. Now they're contested forever. And game ends. Okay, so game ends, and neither of these properties ever got captured. So, like we said, once this pipe seam gets busted, if you don't have these properties as player 2, there's a good chance you're never going to get them. Let's look at another game here. So this is Crawfy versus Tordread. We'd already peeked the openers of this one. So again, let's see what happens with these properties here. So we see Crawfy caps this and actually risks a first hit against the tank here to delay this cap turn. So now Crawfy has this city, or has the comm tower rather, and also manages to delay that city. I don't really advocate for trying to contest the city, but whatever. That's what happened here. So anyways, for day 11, day 12, day 13. All right, we're really zipping through this. All right, it is day 21. Comm tower is still neutral. Finally, so day 22, Tordread finally gets this comm tower. So we've had, 20 days of brawling, and the entire time that they've been brawling, Tordread has been fighting one comm tower against 2. So you can see how consequential it is for Crawfy to get that tower early and Tordread not to get it. This game ends up being pretty wild. I recommend going and giving it a watch. Crawfy ends up winning here in the end, but it's probably worth another look in detail. Tordread, I think, does pretty well fighting in a mirror match down a tower the whole time and still almost equalizing at some points. But you can see that took Tordread a really long time to get this tower when it got denied in the early game. Now, another game. This is my game against Kantbei. So I opt to go for the tower a little bit earlier than some people. So I get the tower here, and I delay this with an infantry. We're just watching this. Day 16, tower still uncapped. Okay. Neverlocke versus GetGood. GetGood, also known as Quacker Duck, very good player. So again, we're just paying attention to what's going on with these properties. That's all. I know we're going super fast through this. We're just focusing on one thing here. So now, this is interesting. Both comm towers get denied. Day 15, nobody's got into the center comm towers. And the game ends. So the game ends with GetGood basically about to get this comm tower on day 25. So again, both comm towers uncapped the entire game because they both got denied. And then lastly, we'll look at my game against Tordread. This is the replay that I'll be going into in a lot of detail on in part 2. But in this one, we actually both get the comm tower. And so this game actually was my first game on this map. I actually think I probably had an opportunity to deny this and cause a lot of problems for Tordread, but I ended up not doing that. But so this is one of the rare situations where we actually do split the comm towers, but this is kind of the exception rather than the rule. As you've seen in these other replays, it is really, really common to have the comm towers denied. And also we saw that if you don't get this city in the early game, then it tends to get uncapped forever. That being said, it really ought to be possible to get your infantry here fast enough to kind of lock down this city. But you got to make sure to do it. So I think now as we kind of transition to our lessons here. Actually, before we get to lessons, let's look at what people are doing to bust down the pipe seams. That's an important detail. We should spend a little bit of time talking about that. Okay, so I'm actually going to send us into another replay. I actually hadn't intended on showing this one when I was thinking about putting this video together, but here we are. So this is actually myself and Muji. I don't know why I always get tier 2 on this map, but I've played a lot of Eagle versus Olaf on this map. That's just how it's worked out. But so what I want to show you from this game is the dynamics of what happens if you don't break down the pipe seam. So we're going to kind of blast through this. And in this game, we are going to focus on the pipe seams and just see how I choose to bust it. So the reason this tank is kind of messed up is because I actually send this first tank into the pipe seam. I haven't decided whether this is a good idea or not. Doing this, similar to what I mentioned about the artillery first opener to bust the pipe seam, sending your tank into the pipe seam early on basically gives your opponent full information about what your build is. That being said, giving away the fact that you're doing a tank first on this map isn't a shocking amount of information. And additionally, this pipe seam, generally you want to break it down with 1 tank hit and 2 artillery hits. So I think it's kind of nice just to get a tank hit on it right away, because this tank is mostly for defense of this area primarily. So it's not like it's trying to get to any of these cities quickly to try and deny anything. So in terms of movement, like, you can actually get a hit on this pipe seam with this tank and still have the tank be able to get over here in time to defend your caps. But it is just giving away that that you have a tank. But we'll see how that plays out later on and whether that makes a difference. So then I get the recon, but then my next vehicle after that is the artillery. And so I use this artillery to bust down this pipe seam. I'm going to put it here. there's some people that also advocate like putting the artillery here instead of here. I don't really think it's that impactful. I kind of like having it down here because you have the option of using the artillery to secure these properties if your opponent's being aggressive down there. But doing it this way would allow you to get to these woods faster if you want to try and do an artillery lock on the enemy comm tower. So there's decisions to be made there. So in this game, I actually forgo this property to prioritize getting this comm tower early. So this is a day 8 capture of this comm tower, which is, I think, 1 turn faster than I had been capping this comm tower in previous games. And I kind of settled on, this is the 3rd game that I played on this map, and I kind of settled on this because I started learning how important those 2 properties were, and so I decided that I wouldn't leave that to chance. And we're delaying this cap, but this cap ends up being less contestable, so we can wait on that, and it's not going to be much of a risk. But if we wait on these, then we are putting ourselves at a pretty substantial risk. And then this lets me be greedier because this artillery is my next vehicle after the tank and the recon, and so I'm going to be able to get this pipe seam down very quickly. So you can see Muji is kind of contesting down here. And I don't really see it. But now I've got a recon down here and I do see it. So I see this and I'm like, oh, well, that's not good. But I also see that the comm tower is not captured. So I'm like, oh, that is good. And you can see, so having this comm tower means I could deny this city very easily. I don't really intend on contesting this city forever, but it's a free deny with my infantry, so it's pretty nice. And I'm just putting some pressure on. I don't expect any of this stuff to actually get flipped, but capping this city means that if there's no infantry in range of here, then this infantry has to get attacked by a vehicle instead of something hitting these very exposed vehicles. So I'm hoping that maybe this infantry can absorb a tank hit for me. That would be the ideal situation. And we can see with the vision that that's exactly what's going to happen because the infantry are out of position. So this is a wise play by Muji, realizing you need to stick a lot of stuff in the way of the comm tower, because otherwise, I mean, my infantry can bust through. This is a paper thin wall, right? I was so sad. So this 2 infantry, all he had to do was do 1 HP of infantry to that infantry on the comm tower. I think it's like a, I don't know what the actual roll is. It's like 50. It's like almost like coin flip. But you can see that. So actually, I want to skip back. So this is the turn that the pipe seam got broken. So that early tank hit on the pipe seam. I guess I could have had this tank do the tank hit on the pipe seam instead. So maybe it's not, you know, all that consequential in the long run. But anyway, having the seam dead by day 9 means that this tank can get out here, and so I can start exerting pressure over here very early. And so the timing window to exploit is pretty small for player 1. And actually, and so I think I sent both tanks over here. I pulled him back. Interesting. Because I think I realized that the fight was happening over here. So, so having having this pipe seam broken means that we can start sending tons of vehicles over this way. And we can flood that side. And unfortunately, as we saw, my 2 HP deny on the comm tower failed, and so Muji ends up getting the comm tower. I was very, very sad. But you can see that this city gets denied, and so if we keep going here, it's day 18, and actually I'm the one who ends up capping this after a lot of things. So I guess my point is twofold. One, we saw another example of, you know, one of these 2 properties getting denied past like day 10 and then getting denied forever. And then this is also just one option for breaking the pipe seam pretty early, getting an artillery as like the 2nd or 3rd vehicle, and just putting it down here, or you can put it on the city and hit the pipe seam twice to knock that out. Okay. So yeah, final takeaways from this map. So I think we've seen from the replays, we've seen that if you don't get these 2 properties early, it's very, very hard to get them. We've also seen the benefits of breaking this pipe seam, and that it enables player 2 and player 1 to send a lot of vehicles to this area very quickly. And so that makes this area much safer for player 2, and this area much safer for player 1, and also makes these areas extremely contested past the day 10 mark, which is why the opening matters a whole lot. Okay, so I think those are really the 2 biggest takeaways from this map. Let's talk about, to wrap this up, maybe talk about some CO picks based on the tiers. So for tier 4, I think this is a pretty clear Jess map. The reason it's a Jess map, you can see that there is a ton of tank fighting that happens. And so tanks are good, artillery are good, recons are good, and the airport is so far back that the air tends to be not as important on this map. Oftentimes, players will mix in copters a little bit later, but it's a little bit of an afterthought, and that extra 10% for Jess ends up being pretty important. Additionally, this is not really a super great artillery map for the most part, because it is really, really open in the contested areas. So artillery often, it's very hard to wall them safely. So artillery can be something that can benefit Jake, actually, because Jake's powers will give the artillery an extra range for a turn. On like Tornado Road, that can end up being pretty relevant. But on this map, not likely to be as much of a benefit. So I think Jess is I don't know if it's the only choice. Like, you can probably still play Jake. I think tier 4 is almost always the better player is going to win, regardless of CO pick in tier 4. because I don't think the advantages are that huge between the COs, but I do think Jess is slightly the best here. And for tier 3, think Kindle can be very good because there's a lot of properties and fights near properties. Again, especially in like this contested area, right? Like these are a lot of properties that are very close to each other. And so like this tile, and this tile, they're all next to cities. So Kindle, jump scare. Kindle can be very good because urban blight is just very hard to dodge with this layout of cities in the primary areas where you're fighting. But the map is also big enough and the incomes are high enough that Drake is also very good. And additionally, the air units not as important on this map because the airport's far away. So that also favors Drake because Drake doesn't really want to build air units quite as much as the other COs. So Kindle and Drake both playable. Kind of depends on your style. But if you're Kindle, you definitely want to make sure that you play aggressive on denying some of the properties that we talked about. Because if you're Kindle, your power is going to help you deny those even more easily, and it's already pretty easy to deny those past like day 10 or so, and Kindle makes that even more so. So just make sure you don't give those up for free, so that you can secure an advantage later on. For tier 2, I think Eagle and Olaf are both playable. I've picked Eagle 3 times on this map, and I like Eagle a lot. But Eagle kind of will take you as far as you can fly him, so to speak. So Olaf is very simple to play, and you can, even with less experience, you can use him pretty effectively because his superpower is, you can't really use it incorrectly. So if you're less experienced, then I think Olaf is definitely a safe pick. It can be challenging to try and convert after Winter Fury on this map because defending properties that you own already is pretty easy compared to with some other maps. For tier 1, I think you really, unfortunately, just kind of have to play Hawk. Maybe you could think about Von Bolt, but I don't think Von Bolt's that great. Hawk, you got the AoE global damage, and you also get the extra 10%. So even with Hawk, even if you end up with both of the center towers denied, you're still getting that plus 20% attack bonus to get your guaranteed kills with the 2 HP attacking a city or the 2 tanks attacking a tank on a city. So Hawk is just very, very good on this map. I think some people may have tried Sasha, but I think the income is just a little bit too high for Sasha. The amount of units that can be made, and therefore the amount of units that are getting damaged every turn, means that the CO meters are building a little bit too quickly for Sasha to keep under control with her CO power. And so, yeah, Sasha's getting a lot of benefit from all of the cities on the map, but at the same time, Sasha's sweet point is the income level that will allow Sasha to get tech units when the opponent doesn't really have enough money to get tech units. And that's usually about like 2 or 3 cities lower than what is on this map. Sasha's really good around like the 20k income, and I it's like 23k, I think, half map. So it's a little bit high. So yeah, so those, I think maybe you could play Sturm on this map too. I've actually ever seen that, but that would be an interesting replay. Maybe I'll go see if I can find one. So Hawk or Sturm, those are for sure the 2 options. And if you want to play safe, I don't think you can go wrong with Hawk on this map. Anyway, it's been an hour. So I think we're going to wrap up part 1 here, and stay tuned for part 2 coming shortly, or in all likelihood when you're watching this. It's probably already out and linked maybe in the description if I'm smart about it. So go check that out. That will be a deep dive into a replay of mine on this map. And in that discussion, we will go a little bit less into the map itself and more into the dynamics of that specific CO matchup. So we'll be kind of going at it from a little bit of a different focus and perspective. But I think this is good to to go an hour just talking about the map itself. So hopefully this is helpful. And if you ever find yourself on this map, I hope you find yourself well prepared for victory in your battles ahead. With that, I will say thank you for watching, and see you next time.